Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fun Indian Guy podcast. I hope you are doing amazing. Though you are home, I hope everything is fine at your end. And this is the first podcast actually on the channel where we are doing it like a satellite version of it. That means I am shooting this in Dapoli right now and I'm having conversation with Neha, who is right now in Mumbai. So it's gonna be super fun. First time on the channel. I'm really looking forward to it. Like this whole isolation situation is also opening up many possibilities. So this is one of those possibilities. To give you a context, of course, we will talk to Neha and we'll ask her more about herself and everything. But to give you amazing context about this whole situation, is that right now we are at home and we are in no position to buy new things. We cannot go outside and buy clothes. We are not going to mall to check out like window shopping and all those things. We are not even buying online all the things which we usually buy, for example shirts, t-shirts, tops, saris, whatever, when it comes to fashion. So this is the best moment actually in our life where we are in isolation, and this time we can use to really reflect on our consumption, reflect on our practices, our behavior when it comes to buying new fashion and all those things, so that when all of this thing goes to normal or resolves and you go out and start buying things when you need, you will have that mindfulness when you buy stuff. So that's why I wanted to invite Neha on the podcast, because she comes from that kind of context and perspective, so we can talk about it more. And I hope by the end of this podcast we all will learn new things about sustainable fashion. So basically Neha is a sustainable textile designer. She has studied in NID, if I'm not wrong, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
And also in UK. We will of course get to know this more from her. And I'm super happy to invite her on the podcast. Neha, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, first of all.
No, thank you so much for having me. I know we've been friends for some time now, but I'm always following your work. But yeah, it's an opportunity for me to be featured over here. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm really like happy to get and this, like, actually I was supposed to get Neha on the podcast in like a physical podcast together in
We're
Mumbai,
doing
but then this
virtually.
whole yes, lockdown happened and now we are doing this new thing. So excuse us if there are some glitches in this, but yeah, it's all about the conversation and the information we're gonna get out of it. So Neha, I would ask you to introduce yourself, like where do you come from, what did you study, and all those things.
Yes, for sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is Neha Rao. I am a sustainable textile designer. I have my own brand called Soot, where I print with industrial waste, as well as I'm associated with Bombay Hem Company, where I look after the fabric department for them. So yeah, two hats, exciting space, lot of work.
Okay, and where all have you studied before? Like what was your basic study path or education path?
Yes, so I started my journey at National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, where I did my undergrad. Post that, I worked in a couple of places, especially with designers and brands. And after that, I went for my master's at Chelsea College of Art and Design, where I studied sustainable textiles. And yes, I've also been a part of the Unschool Fellowship, which was last year.
Amazing. So you have got this a very dynamic and diverse experience into the design field, and also working with people from various different backgrounds. So why did you start studying the design, and why specifically you chose to go into sustainability?
So I think my journey actually started. I mean, since it started with an ID, but I would try to trace it back to my childhood, where I was always interested in craft and design and art really. But of course, it was not design. It was not termed design then. And when I came to a juncture where I had to pick a career path, I discovered design really. And when I went there, like when I was selected by NID, I was still not sure which area that I was super excited or interested in, because everything seemed so beautiful and so interesting. We were learning so many things every day. It was very overwhelming. It was very challenging, but it was absolutely like it was. We were on a high, I would say.
Yeah.
And textiles actually was a calling because I loved to work with material. I've always been a very tactile person, because of which textile was my calling, and I was so happy that I chose this field because it's so broad, the whole supply chain as well. Like there are just so many areas that you can specialize and learn about, that it was so interesting to me. So yes, like my journey started with NID, and I feel I'm still a student now. I'm still learning every day. So yeah.
Definitely. So that's quite interesting. So now we're gonna run the intro and get into the further conversation with Neha, where we will first talk about her education and the bits she got out of the whole journey of studying abroad or studying in India, and then we will go into her professional life, where she is handling her own brand as well as working for the other brand, and then we will also talk more about this whole sustainability, consumption, what we should do, and all those things. So cannot wait to start discussing all these things, but after the intro. Hey people, I'm Suyog, also known as the Fun Indian Guy. I'm a service designer, musician, and a filmmaker. I really love to talk about design or creativity with super duper amazing people, and that's why we produce this podcast so that we can share this fun together. So after doing your bachelor's or the undergrad at NID, you went to UK to do your specific master, which was about sustainability and textile. So how was this whole experience about the field itself, as well as going abroad and studying design?
So I think it made a lot of sense for me to finish my undergrad in India and then go abroad. Also because in the design field there is just so much technical knowledge that you need to have. In NID we learned a set of tools. We learned a different technical knowledge really that we needed to have in our hands, because textile itself is very technical in its being. So very glad that happened, and we were exposed to a number of things. But after my undergrad, I did work in the fashion industry for a bit, and it was a very alarming time for me. It was just an awakening where I realized just the way business happens and the way things are. And how they seem on the surface, where it's all shiny and glamorous, but just the behind, like how people are treated and how products are made, is just a different story. And I just felt that yes, like I am in this situation where textile is the second largest polluter in the world. There is so much that can be done to improve this. Hence my area of interest in terms of sustainability grew, and that's why it was a very conscious call to go to London to study sustainable textiles, and really look at the area of innovation, because I had worked with the craft sector where I was sitting with weavers doing projects, but yes, the innovation bit was where I was excited, and I really thought that it would be a new area for me to learn. So yes, that's how London happened.
Right, and then you decided to come back to India.
Yeah.
How would you put that situation? Like, what was going on in your head right at that moment where you decided not to continue, in spite of having this amazing possibilities in UK, then coming to India?
I mean, yes, during my 1 year in London, it was a great place. There was just so much exposure in terms of museum and the people, and the project that you got to work with. But for me and the nature of work that I was, like, I knew that I was not, like, I wouldn't be able to grow Soot, because you just needed people, you needed labor, you needed space, you needed equipment. It would be much easier and much faster for me to do things in India. So it was a very conscious call to come back, and also because I felt that I had this power with me, where I knew that I came from a place where people are still doing things in a certain way, and it could be changed, and it was the need of the hour. I had that skill, I had that knowledge, and also because I was working in such a niche place, and very few people knew about it. So I knew that it was an area where I could grow and apply my knowledge. So there was a sense of patriotism also in me when I was there, and I just felt so entitled that yes, I need to come back and do something about it. So yes, a very conscious call.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I'm grateful for the exposure and the opportunity, but yeah, like it was my calling to come back.
Yeah, because somebody has to bring it back home. And that's also my constant thought or thinking when I'm working in EU, like in European Union, working on different projects in different brands. When I look at it from like a higher level, and if I take myself out of that whole conclusion, the system can still run on itself. Like they are not gonna stop just because I'm not there. But if you if I put myself in a context like India, where there needs to be things to change, then there is a lot of need to do things differently, to like empower people, or to even like educate people to think in certain way, or to just bring your design practices and apply them in the context of India where things are yet to reach. So that is more appealing for me, that like your voice, your value, or your practice, or your skill set matters way more in a context like India than in context of any Western developed country. But then there is also a factor of exploration and then money and all those things. But still, I'm in that thought process. I think I would still.
No, of course. It's a journey for everyone, yeah.
Exactly. So I think I will take a little bit of time to explore more and then fall back. But because of this whole pandemic and everything, I'm not even sure how the world's gonna look like after 2 3 months, and it's a very tricky situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary for sure. No, no, definitely.
Yeah. So you talked a bit about Soot. So basically, Soot was your thesis or your final project at your masters, which you did
Correct, correct.
for the university, and then you really brought that project back home to India and executed it in this context, and you made it real, and now you own the brand and you're doing it. So I'm very inspired by this whole story. Can you tell us more about like how it happened, like how the whole thing was?
Yes, of course. So the journey started when I went for my master thesis, where we had to just pick an area of our interest and how and what we wanted to work around it. So I started looking at the major impact points in this polluting industry, where my realization or my analysis brought me to a point where the conclusion was that coloration is one big impact point. We are human beings. We love color, and it's something that we're always going to have in and around us. Most of our selection also of garmenting does happen majorly because of color. And most of the time, the answer that I did receive at the end of my question, saying that, how can we make coloration more sustainable, was natural dyeing. Now, natural dyeing technically is not very sustainable when we're talking in a scale of, producing stuff, churning units, thousands and thousands of units per meter. This and natural dyeing itself does require a lot of chemical material. It does require a lot of natural resource. So it does make sense for a DIY project or a much more curated, collection, but not in terms of color fastness or exposure to sunlight. Because of which not everyone recycles their clothes, not everyone redyes it or reuses their garments. Most of it does go to the landfill, so it's like a whole domino effect. I started looking at coloration, where maybe I can find a solution which looks at all these impact points throughout the cycle of a garment. The humble idea that there's so much pollution around us, what are we doing about it? I started looking at carbon black, and believe it or not, like anything that you burn, any biofuel or any fossil fuel that you burn, carbon is a byproduct. You cannot escape it. It's a chemical reaction. And I started looking at this reaction in these huge industrial chimneys, especially in industries where pharma and pharmaceutical products are made. And there is tons and tons of this waste generated. Not everyone recycles it properly. Currently, this carbon is used in the tire industry and the cement industry. That's how they get their gray and the black color. And I thought that, like if suppose a coloration also can come through this, where we substitute our grays and blacks through screen printing methods. We're still using a sustainable ink, and there are very few solutions right now in the market. So it was a very exciting space to be in.
Right. So you're taking this like coal or the ash from the chimneys of factories and all those things, you're collecting it, processing it, turning into inks, and you're using it for printing on textile and paper, or depending on the demand or the project. And it's quite interesting because it's so, like, now that you explained it, it feels very obvious, like, man, yes, it's there, and so we should do something about it, and we should use it in some sense. But I think it needs that design knowledge, or it needs that kind of perspective for you to first of all think about this problem in this way, that you come up with a solution. And design empowers us to do this, and it's quite interesting because when we see problems there are obvious solutions, and then people just stop there and they never like discover more possibilities, some other ways to do it. And I had a podcast with Valentina, one of my professors, really famous well-known professor from Milan. I did a podcast with her, and there was this one point we discussed, that design never says this is the only one solution to do like anything.
Definitely.
So you cannot equate it like a mathematics, that there is just one solution to this problem. There are multiple solutions to the problem. The way you use it, the way you put it in context, gonna give you the results according to this whole thing. So it's amazing that you studied design, and then you looked at a day-to-day life problem and solved it in such a different way, and you came up with this. I'm super happy, and I really congratulate you that you made it real. You didn't just stop it at the thesis level.
Means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yes, because I kept seeing your Instagram posts about different products which were made through by using your ink, and I was really inspired by it. And now that we get to talk about it, and now we get to also like let others listen to your story. I know you have done a lot of panel discussions and speeches and all those things before, but you get to be on my podcast and do it. It's also a really great honor.
No, thank you so
So
much.
so ink is this one thing which come like when we talk about sustainable consumption in textile. So ink is the first thing, and the second thing which obviously comes after, or rather comes before, is the textile which you're gonna print on, or the
Yes.
textile which you're gonna use.
Correct.
And now you're working with a company like full time work, and you get to also do like impactful work in sustainable textile, let's say, production. So can you tell us more about how you're working with hemp, and how this whole thing is?
Yes, for sure. So I work with this amazing organization called Bombay Hemp Company. It's an all cannabis. It's an all cannabis organization where we're not only looking at textiles, but we're also looking at fiber. We're looking at food. We're looking at pharma. So it's a one-stop shop really for cannabis. And they're amazing because they're so nice enough to help me promote my own business, as well as supporting me, and as well as like I'm looking after a department for them. So it's an exciting space because I get to meet a lot of makers, creators, people who want to be very conscious in the material that they use. So we essentially behave like a consulting service for them most times, where we are making them understand what hemp is. And of course there's a lot myth breaking also with that, where, like in the next section I can tell you the difference between hemp and cannabis, but essentially trying to be enablers for them to onboard their ideas with material hemp. And also the availability of sustainable material is also a big problem. The whole textile industry also works in a way where only if there are big MOQs or big orders or big numbers is where someone would have their attention. So we wanted to change that. We wanted to become the next Amazon of fabrics or material, really, where any maker, creator could just go online, e-commerce, just pick the material that they like, and it would be delivered to them. We also understand that it's a very textile oriented, a very tactile industry. So yes, we're trying to work around new methods where samples could be sent across, where people can feel and touch and then make a much more informed decision. But essentially with cannabis, it's a lot of education that has to happen. Under the cannabis umbrella, there is hemp and marijuana, and the two completely different plants. And people often think that, oh, it's drugs, or it's under this notion that, oh, it's it is going to cause harm. But this plant itself has some 25,000 uses, where we are only able to explore few at the moment. So yeah, there's just so much going on with this plant.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting, right? Like, if there is a cultural taboo about something, and then people start to attach that thing with the similar products, and then they are like all going like, whoa, this is gonna be bad for us. But in fact, the clothes or the synthetic clothes which they're using right now must be doing like way more harm to the environment, to their own body. But like, it's they don't realize it. And also it's responsibility of people to make this awareness, to inform people, to educate people, and then only we can really expect people to also make wise choices. Because right now most of the people are not aware about these things, and this is the best uh, not the industry, but best field or career to be in, where you are also educating people as well as providing them with a solution. So, what? So, can you tell us more about how hemp really works and what do you actually do? Are you farming it? Like how this whole cycle works?
Yes, for sure. So, as an organization, I think the main starting point is the seed. So, we are working towards a solution really where we can get the right seed, and we are in a position to give it to the farmers and cultivate the crop, and we take it and then we can make products out of it. But it's still work in progress. There is still a lot of R&D that's required, because right now hemp is grown wild. Uttar Pradesh is one of the main regions where hemp can be cultivated, so you need not have to have any license. But the seed grown over there is wild, so we don't know what we're consuming. We don't have any standardization of the fibers that we procure from these plants. So there is still a lot of shooting in the dark per se. So we, of course, we are in a position where it is going to take us 3 to 4 years where we can get the seed right, but we can still work around products. We can still create that noise really. So with fiber and textiles, essentially we do procure a lot of our handloom is also done in Uttarakhand. So we do work with the Women's Weave organization where we are making products. We're trying to empower them, and yeah, like really improve on the quality of fiber. We're doing a lot of projects with IIT Delhi as well. All the Birlas, all the Raymonds, etc. Everyone has a big growing interest in hemp because linen itself has stagnated the market. What is the next big thing? Hemp itself as a plant is really, really sustainable. And if you compare it with cotton, cotton is evil because, to give you an example, a plain cotton t-shirt will take about 2,700 liters, where hemp will only take 700 liters. So there's a
Wow,
vast,
that's a lot of difference.
yeah, big difference. And also in terms of the yield per hectare, like where cotton stops, hemp starts. So hemp, like a 1 acre of land of cotton will essentially give you somewhere between 200 to 300 kgs, while hemp will start at 300, can go up to 500, just to give you a rough number. But yeah, there's a lot of factors put into place where hemp really wins. In terms of pharma as well, like to just put light upon just one point, that even CBD, we have pets, we have cancer patients, we have epilepsy, we have insomnia, we have PCOD. Like there are so many health issues that all of us are facing, and we're opting for chemicals to solve for this, where hemp could be one of the herbal remedies as well. So yeah, this plant as a whole is a magic plant, just to sum it up.
Right. It's quite interesting because as you were also talking about producing things in Uttarakhand itself and all the things, because textile doesn't stop like that. It starts with farming and then getting the cotton or getting the hemp, and then there is the big cycle of production and then supply chain, and the whole thing like adds up to this big carbon footprint. So I think starting locally and producing locally, giving labor to or giving employment to local people, like it has so many good things about it. But that also makes me question that where was hemp for this long? Like why nobody started doing it if there were so many benefits of it?
So yes, believe it or not, this plant has been around us from like 800 BCs, and it's not something new. It's not something recently discovered. Chinese were the first people to work with this plant. There has been there has been so much research done since then, and there are 600 patents ahead of us. But during the 1970s, when America banned cannabis growth altogether, we were unfortunately, during the Gandhian phase, we were unfortunately under some amount of pressure to ban it in India as well. And we did. And we lost a lot of time during the Industrial Revolution. So, because of which our machinery itself is not equipped to process hemp. It is a state law, because of which every set of government has its own policies, own rules, own regulations. So it's taking some time to really show them the mirror and tell them that you have this crop sitting with you. So much more can happen. During one data study, we found that if suppose a farmer chooses to be a hemp farmer, his revenue will go up by 30%. That's a lot compared to, some years back where cotton farmers were committing suicides. So there is a big domino effect that can happen, and so many solutions that can come, not only from the environmental perspective but the people and the government, and finance as well, the economy. So yeah, we're working towards it. It's slow progress, but yeah, we're optimistic that we'll get there.
Right. Just basic question because I don't have so much idea about it. Can the regular like cotton producer right now completely switch to hemp? Is it the same environmental condition hemp needs to grow in, or it's like it needs some specific conditions to grow?
Actually, believe it or not, hemp requires much less, like the climatic condition, the resources, the labor, all less compared to what cotton requires. Cotton upkeep is much higher. So, in terms to just give you some data points, cotton, the life cycle of cotton would take about good 6 months, while hemp would only take 3 months. So it's half the life cycle. It requires very less water. It requires very less to almost no pesticides and insecticides, because it's a natural, like it does fix the soil. It has nitrogen fixation properties. So it's much better for the soil as well. And in terms of climatic condition as well, industrial hemp, where the levels are below 0.3% of THC, does not require certain climatic condition. Like you must have seen marijuana in movies where certain greenhouses, controlled lighting, controlled cold environment is required. This is not the case with industrial hemp. So yeah, in terms of that, to make a switch will be much easier compared to marijuana per se.
And it's legal to plant it.
No, you need to have a license with the government in order to plant it. And so you and me cannot grow it in our backyard. Like that will be illegal. But yes, if you're a licensed grower, is where you can cultivate it. But of course, there are certain rules and regulations where your crop will be tested for the THC level. That's a psychotropic compound in the hemp, and it has to have the level below 0.3%.
Okay, so there are these policies around it, which are very logical. So I hope more people opt for it, get the licenses, and do this practice nicely. And I think also for policymakers, it's very tricky because they want to stop
Yeah.
one thing, but not stopping has so
It
many
can start.
benefits. So I hope we find a nice balance, and then we get more hemp for textile and other really nice, useful purposes. So I really like your approach towards it because industries or companies or brands like you guys have really a huge responsibility in terms of spreading the awareness and making people use it, making people grow it, or get at least to understand the process to start growing it or get the licenses and all. And more it's out there, people will opt for like more. So the textile is one sustainable thing which you're doing. Then you are doing this ink, sustainable ink on top of it, and you are pretty much covering the whole printing and textile industry in your personal individual career. So what would you recommend to people, like general people who are not in industry, who are just people who consume or people who buy stuff, to do some steps today to keep their behavior sustainable?
I think the switch is fairly simple than what we make of it. I feel that we all can just start, like, because especially in India we have access to tailors. It's so easy to just walk to them, make a garment of your own sizing, because I feel that most of the time we toss things because they don't fit you in a certain way. So I feel when you are involved to some extent in the garment or the product making, you keep it for a longer duration. You have a certain kind of relationship with it. So it can just start with simple things. I would suggest that we all have our basics, like we all have a pair of jeans, a black dress, a white shirt, a black top. We can start mindfully using these, like we make these basics with natural fabrics. You can So it can just start with simple things. It need not be really huge per se. Fashion as well, like we all have found a certain type of style or certain type of things that are comfortable to us, and they become a certain kind of uniform, really. So we start looking at brands. We It's all about just reading up and being a little more mindful, questioning them when you go to buy, that where my clothes have come from, who have made it, what is this material. Just to a couple of questions will give you a little more insight as to, does this product really is sustainable or not. Of course, we will not be in a position where we will be able to know everything, because as I mentioned, that the textile industry has a lot of touch points. But starting and supporting small businesses, local businesses, is a good starting point. And even for me, like when I wanted to be much more mindful, I literally started with my basics, and now I try to make my clothes myself. That is from the product point of view. Also, when you have worn out the garment, to a certain extent, where the life cycle of the garment is reduced, definitely would opt to recycle it, to repair it as much as possible. And of course, like like India does inherently have a system in place where we recycle. We give it to either a household help, or we make it into a rack cloth. But it's all about just going back to our grandparents and asking how they did things. They were much, much more sustainable than what we are today. So small steps do go a big way, for sure.
Yeah, I like the interesting point you said here was try to get the clothes from the local producers or local tailors and everything, because you get to see them made and you have more empathy towards it. And it's very interesting point, because I would just add an example here. Let's say you have a rose plant at your house, you are growing it yourself, you're watering it every day and checking everything, and then you get a rose, like the flower at the end of it. The feeling you have towards that rose and the feeling you have towards a rose which you bought from a flower shop or flower mart is completely different, because this first example is like you grew it yourself and you saw it from the beginning, and yeah, you're more attached towards it, and that also makes you more careful about the product. And I think if we apply this basic like concept in any of the products which we are seeing everywhere, if we just have more empathy towards the product, towards the process, towards the material, I think we will be more mindful. But again, everything lies into education. If you are taught to do that, or if you are aware about it, you will do it. But definitely going local, consuming local products, being aware about materials, recycling, upcycling are really like very important things, and which can have a bigger impact if all of us are doing it.
It's just these small steps.
And even I started to like, actually I first initially got hooked to minimalism like couple of years back, and then I went into that, and then even buying stuff was quite mindful, and now I really have very few clothes and I just reuse them. Like in fact, in my videos you will see t-shirts which I'm really using for last 4 years, and every time I wear it while shooting a video, my mom is like enough, like stop using that, like every video you're using same t-shirt. And I'm like, it's okay, like nobody cares about my t-shirt. Rather, if everybody cares, then they know that I'm using it for so long.
I think I feel that, yeah, like our mindsets are changing, because we, of course, like we are terming things differently. Like sustainability also as a term just became very popular in the recent years, but just the way we were doing things back, like our parents, our grandparents, it was already there with us. And I feel, yeah, like very true about connection, like emotional connection with the products that we own. It need not just be your garments, but even products that are in and around your house, like from furniture to whatever we are consuming. That emotional connection is where the real touch point is. Like as much and as long as you're consuming the product for a longer duration and they're good quality because they last you that long, yeah, that's the, I think that's the answer somewhere. It does lie over there.
So this whole minimalism, sustainable consumption, mindful consumption, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about what you're buying, it's really helpful. And this whole topic is very interesting for me. That's why I read a lot about it. I watch a lot of videos about it. I talk a lot about it with people, and I try to apply it, of course, in my life in whatever sense I could. And I think the talking is very important. Even if you don't own like a YouTube channel, or even if you don't have an audience, just telling your parents, telling your friends, telling your cousins, your brothers, like siblings, I think it can go a long way, if you're giving really nice information.
Yeah, word of mouth is actually the best way of marketing. So yeah, but people do appreciate a personal comment or a personal feedback or a review. So yeah, definitely we should all talk about it, and it should become a dinner table conversation, and it should become normal. Like that should be the next normal for sure.
Yes, exactly. And I also try my best to talk to my cousins who are really young, and try to like talk to them in their language about these things, about using things you really want, not buying all the time and all those things. Of course, you need a lot of patience to deal with it, but also in our general education, these topics like sustainability, consumption, all these things should be included. I'm not sure when will it come, but till that time I think we can go and talk about it, and we can make other people to talk about it, of course, if they buy it in first place or if they believe in it. So I think we covered a lot of things, when it comes to sustainability and production and everything. We hope that you and people like you and companies like you put in more and more efforts and grow a lot, so that the consumption doesn't become problem anymore, because then the production of sustainable stuff is so high that no matter what you consume, it's gonna be sustainable. But that's the utopian world, I hope, which comes soon.
Yeah, no, definitely it will be. It will be very soon. I do believe it in my heart. Yeah.
So anything else you would like to add? Anything else you would like to tell us to look into, watch something, read something, anybody we should follow, or like we will of course talk about your Instagram as well, or your social media as well. But before that, anything you would like us to, like a recommendation basically?
Yeah, for sure. So I think pandemic is this quarantine is a great time to really educate yourself. So there are these really good documentaries that you can watch, and one of them would be True Cost. It's a big. It just shook me. Like once I saw that movie, the core just shook me. So I would highly recommend True Cost. Besides that, yes, like even you mentioned earlier, that minimalism is also a great documentary to watch. It'll just change the way you look at things. One more really interesting documentary and a fun take would be Mary Kondo. We all have a lot of time at our disposal, so we can really sort and look at things that really give us joy and they don't, and then recycle it very responsibly, not to throw it off. But yeah, these are a couple of things, and of course, like there are a lot of other. Organizations like BOF, that is Bad Business of Fashion, some Instagram pages as well in and around that. Caring is also a really good organization that works in sustainability. So some of these resources, just so it comes in your feed as and when you get educated as to what is happening in the business of fashion and how things are changing. So yeah, a couple of my recommendations.
Nice. Another question to you, because you come from that context. Any brands you would recommend which are in Mumbai or around Mumbai, who are who have these amazing sustainable products when it comes to fashion, where we can buy stuff?
Specifically in Bombay, because I am associated with Bombay Company, we do have a sister concern brand called B Label, which is doing all hemp clothing. They're very affordable and very approachable as well. So in Bombay specifically, I would I would highlight that. Besides that, there are a number of brands like Pani. They are a swimwear brand, specifically looking at how the Indian female figure is made, and they're specifically designing for the Indian female, keeping using sustainable material. There is Cora as well, which I believe is in India, and they make sustainable jeans. So it's literally an investment piece. So yeah, a couple of brands, indie brands. There is also We Are Sui. They make really beautiful hand made stuff, embroidered, and for everyday daily wear. They also have some really good stuff as well. So yeah, these are a couple of brands I would recommend.
Awesome.
Yeah.
After that, the next question is where we should follow you, like Instagram, LinkedIn. Where can people follow you or get to know your work more?
Yeah, so Instagram is one of the best mediums because it's literally my portfolio. So Instagram is great. My handle is Neha Rao, Rao with four O's. So it's Neha Rao, and I'm also available on LinkedIn as well. It's my more professional, less fun face on LinkedIn, but yeah, available on both.
Perfect. Does Soot has a website? Does Soot have a website?
So Soot does not have a specific website just yet, but yes, people approach me through Instagram. Also because I don't have existing stock, I make per order, so it's very catered, it's very custom made. But yeah, just a message or email, and I'll reach out to you.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Neha, first of all, to come on the podcast and do this experiment with me.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was a great opportunity. It was so much fun talking to you and going back memory lane, and it was a nostalgic trip. So yeah, thank you.
Yes. So thank you guys for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate that you stayed till the end to watch us or to listen to us on any of these podcasting apps like Spotify and Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and all those apps. I really appreciate that you stayed till the end. It means super a lot to me. And if you stayed till the end, I would like you to go down in comment section and comment slow fashion is cool. So if you type that in the comment section, then I'll know that you stayed till the end. And it's just fun to see that because in the last podcast, I just said that you should go down and type drink water. And so many people stayed till the end of the podcast and wrote drink water in the comments. So today, if you stayed till the end, go in the comment box and type slow fashion is cool. So that's all from this podcast. And yeah, it was a fun experiment also for me to do it on the phone. Actually, I'm talking to her on this phone right now while we both of us are shooting it in our own houses, work from home, podcasting from home situation. And that being said, guys, thank you so much once again. Take care, stay safe, and have fun in this quarantine time. Find your fun and try to do it. And I'll catch you in the next video or the next podcast. And that's all. Ciao, ciao.
The Fun Indian Guy Podcast.